Demonstration phansi. Amandla. Thank you very much. Let me start by greeting our national chairperson, Comrade Senzeni Zokwane, our first Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Usoli Mapaila, and all the officials, the SACP and the members of the Central Committee of our party. Let me also greet the leadership of the ANC that is present here. Comrade Beginjalinjal and the leaders of COSATU who are with us, members of the diplomatic corps, ambassadors, Austimpo, umama wethu. Let me also greet Comrade Jacob. Jacob wethu lo hayi lo waseBhayibhelini. Owethu lo Jacob, the provincial secretary of the host province. And to thank you together with your PEC for hosting us here in Gauteng. Representatives from all our other democratic formations, representatives of business, especially those sections of business who are patriotic enough to know that the Communist Party also needs money, members of the media. Most importantly, let me greet all of you, comrade delegates, to this special National Congress of the SACP. Comrade Zokwane, as chairperson, you are in charge here, so I'm going to be guided by your directive that we don't talk about matters football. But we must make declarations up front. I love all the PSL clubs and players. Though I must admit I am a Orlando Pirates fan. But I love all the teams, including and in particular my home team, Maritzburg United. So those declarations, I thought they are important, so that when we start, this Congress is as united as everything. On behalf of the 14th Congress Central Committee, I wish to welcome all of you, our very important delegates, as well as our distinguished guests from alliance formations and fraternal parties, both national, regional, and international. I would also wish to welcome distinguished guests who are with us here today. We are gathered over the next few days in this special National Congress, which is our midterm Congress, as our national chairperson said, to review the progress we have made in implementing the resolutions of our 14th National Congress, which were held in July 2017, and map a way forward. It's also important, comrades, to remind ourselves that we are perhaps meeting in a conjuncture that is not exactly the same as the one during which we held our 14th National Congress. Now, as Marxists, we must not be mechanical. Some comrades, when we say this, they say, yeah, you now want to say and change things. No, we can't be mechanical. we are reviewing our resolutions at a different time than when we adopted them. Which means, therefore, as we review the implementation of those resolutions, we must also analyze the current conjuncture. Time and space does matter seriously in Marxist, Leninist analysis. For instance, comrades, domestically in our country, there have been a number of important developments since we last met. We met in July 2017 at a time when there was huge political uncertainty, we must be honest, even amongst ourselves as the SACP, and concerns with regards to the 54th National Conference of the ANC, which was to be held in December 2017 at Nasrec. The divisions and tensions inside the ANC were so deep that we were not even certain on whether the ANC was going to survive Nasrec. But now, Nasrec has come and gone. Fortunately, the ANC still remains one organization. But however, it is still divided and has not overcome the fissures that it had in the run-up to the Nasrec conference. We have a role to play, that's why we mentioned this. Not only in the unity and organizational renewal of the ANC, but also our broad movement. In our entire history as the South African Communist Party, we've never stood aside, let alone celebrate or watch internal divisions and tensions inside any of our alliance formations, including the ANC. We've always sought to make our own modest contribution as an ally and also as legitimate members of the formations that we are aligned to. Because communists are everywhere. They are in the ANC, they are in COSATU, they are in SASCO, they are in the Youth League, they are in the Women's League. They are everywhere. And therefore, we've always taken our task seriously, that wherever we are, we must always make a contribution towards building the unity of those formations. But we've never prescribed to any formation on what to do. Like the ANC, we have never done so. The reason why we are concerned about the ANC is because there can be no national democratic revolution, comrades, that can be advanced and radicalized without a united African National Congress at the center. I want to argue. It's not my argument, it's the argument of the Central Committee. Which, by the way, I must remind comrades, I'm presenting a political report of the Central Committee. Akuyoneka nzimande le political report. Ube kanzimande, it would be much easier. Because ngabe ngiyisho into engiyithandayo. But as a disciplined cadre, I'm trying my best to read and present what the Central Committee says. Our argument is that even if, for argument's sake, the ANC were to disappear tomorrow, we would still need to rebuild an ANC-type organization in this country if we are to take forward the National Democratic Revolution. And let's not make a mistake. The SACP can never be a mass organization like the ANC, and it should not. We are a class party. Just like we can never replace COSATU, we can never be COSATU, be a mass trade union federation. None of the alliance partners can actually substitute the others. It's very important to understand this so that Some of us, we don't wake up and dream of an SACP that will be an ANC now or tomorrow. But we don't need any kind of an ANC. We need a revolutionary ANC as a people's movement that is rooted amongst the people, that is free of gatekeeping, of factionalism, of moneyed interests, an ANC that is capable of uniting the people of South Africa as a whole. Now, it's because of this reason that the Central Committee says to you today, one of the primary tasks of the period is to build the ANC. That's what the Central Committee is saying. The primary challenge of the moment is to build the African National Congress. So communists must be in the ANC branches and seek to build this organization. Of course, comrades, we are meeting now in a period where our other ally, COSATU, faces its own internal challenges. For instance, the Central Committee has said, we are concerned about the weaknesses that we are seeing in COSATU's industrial unions. And as communists, we must work together with COSATU to rebuild the industrial unions, because some of them have become very weak. We can't celebrate that. We need to go out and be part of rebuilding those unions in COSATU. Unfortunately, SANCO is divided into two. That's why we have not invited SANCO to this Congress, because the comrades also are in court. To invite one SANCO at the expense of the other when they are questioning each other even in court, it's not going to be helpful. As in the organizational report, it's going to be explained, as the alliance, we are trying our best to assist SANCO to reunite itself. But also we are noting that our other formations are also not in great shape. SASCO is divided into two. They are meeting now in their National Congress, but the president of SASCO has had to go to court with a court order and use that court order to convene the Congress. Without that court order, that Congress would not have been convened. They promised to join us here later. They will be more than welcome, and we hope that we will have one delegation, not two delegations. COSAS equally is divided. That is now the context in which we are meeting, which then says, as we evaluate our resolutions, we must understand the terrain that we are in and what we as the SACP. But the question is, how strong are we as the SACP since our own Congress? Well, let me not go into that for now, because that's going to be the major subject of our organizational report. We are not just commenting about others and not about ourselves. We must also be looking at ourselves as the South African Communist Party. We are also meeting comrades at a time when the parliamentary opposition, frankly, is in disarray. The main opposition, the DA, is in deep problems. We haven't come here to talk about the DA. But nevertheless, we must note, because it's important to note what is happening there. The crisis in the DA essentially represents the crisis of what has always been the dominant trend of white liberalism in South Africa. What's happening there? If you go back and look at the DA's 1999 election campaign, which was under the slogan, "Fight Back," the aim of that campaign by Tony Leon was to try and win over the support of the National Party, which had imploded, to be drawn into the DA. And they really succeeded, by the way, in drawing the National Party vote into the DA. Zille came thereafter and tried to position the DA to reach out and get membership in our townships. But all that is in crisis now. Why? Because in essence, white liberalism in South Africa, its dominant form has been about white privilege. And also, by the way, white liberalism in South Africa, its dominant faction formation, has never believed in black majority rule. That's why they were always talking about a qualified franchise. Even right up till the 1994 elections, at the negotiations, many of them were still arguing for that. What is a qualified franchise is that we must only allow those black people who are like us, who are educated, who think like us, to be given a vote. Not all this black majority. So that is why the DA even regards its black leadership as part of the qualified franchisees, who must do as your white liberals wish. The moment they start talking affirmative action, because they want to be seen to be closer to the ANC, because they want a vote, they become a threat to white liberalism. That's why Lindiwe Mazibuko and Maimane are gone, because those were the black franchisees in the DA. And they also upset your former National Party. That is why the DA has lost the vote to the EFF, because your National Party people, those conservative ones, have gone back home to the Freedom Front Plus. The other organization, I don't want to talk about them. We were correct to characterize them as a neo-fascist organization. Black chauvinism, that's what characterizes it. You will see it in the next few days that we are right about that. But the challenge that we have is that that organization is exploiting weaknesses in the Progressive Youth Alliance. The fact that the ANC Youth League is dead, we hope, DSG, that you are leading a process to revive it seriously. Our student formations are in trouble. It's only our YCL which is standing. The youth formations in our country generally are weak. And this other neo-fascist organization is exploiting that. But also all what this is showing, comrades, is that there is only one home for non-racialism in South Africa. And that home is our movement. That home is our movement. But also it's a non-racialism that we mustn't take for granted, by the way. Because if truth be told, one of the things we have to correct, even in our own South African Communist Party, we are becoming overwhelmingly African. Let's face the truth. As communists, we don't tell lies. Why are we not drawing more communists drawn from the ranks of the South African community of Indian origin? The colored community, the white community. We have a task to do so, because it's only this movement that is actually capable of uniting our people on a non-racial basis. Now, these are some of the contextual issues. We're going to be touching now on the international situation. We are meeting in an international context whose key feature is the rise of what we call, this may not sound like an easy word, and it's worse if you are Sesotho first language or isiZulu first language or Sitsonga. It tends to become very difficult, but we'll explain it. We call it, we are living in an era of the austeritization of our economies. Ungayizami ngesisuthu noma ngesizulu uzoziluma ulimi. It's austeritization of our economies. What does that mean? What it means is that, comrades, we are in an era where, because where we are faced in many countries with rising national debts, ikweletu zamazwe, and your international global capitalist organizations are saying the best way to deal with this national debt and the economic problems that we face, we must impose austerity across the board. But the reason why it is austeritization is because it's not true that what we are being asked to do is being done. It's austerity by the working class and the poor, but to bail out the rich. That is why, in the wake of the 2008 global economic meltdown, many governments in advanced capitalist countries were bailing out the banks, but not bailing out the working class and the poor. So the austerity that we are being told about must be the austerity for us, but not austerity for the rich. Even now, let's also be self-critical. In South Africa, we are saying now as government, rightly so to a certain extent, because we have got this challenge, there must be austerity, we must look at saving everywhere. But we are not talking about the rich. What are we supposed to do about the rich? The rich are not supposed to do anything other than to benefit from the austerity imposed on the working class. Why are we not taxing the rich more at this point in time if we are to address the problems that we are facing, for instance? So austeritization is for us to fasten our belts, but not the others, not the rich. And our national treasuries throughout the world, especially in the developing world, are under that pressure. You know, being deployed in government, you get a chance to be sent to visit a number of countries. I haven't been to a single country where I have heard the word rating agencies. But in South Africa, you wake up in the morning, the rating agency says this. Midday, the rating agencies say this. At night before you sleep, rating agencies say. It looks like now this thing is becoming a scarecrow to force us not to think creatively about how to deal with our economies, but simply just to respond to what the rating agencies are saying. We are not reckless as the Communist Party. We are not saying that we should not care about what the world says about us. But this whole issue of debt, unfortunately, it also gets used to begin to scare us, not to think creatively. We want to say this. Since our last Congress, our own National Treasury released a document, a discussion document on the economy. We're not happy about, firstly, how that document was released outside of the context of the alliance. Secondly, what worried us most about that document is that it was not an original set of South African proposals. Those were proposals from the OECD and the International Monetary Fund. Now, if there is one thing for South Africa's working class that must not be compromised, is our national sovereignty. We fought the Guptas because the Guptas had made some of our own comrades to mortgage our country, including key appointments to a foreign family that we knew nothing about. And we said our sovereignty is not for sale. It can't be that we fight these state capture networks on national sovereignty, and now we come and allow neoliberal proposals that are similarly violating our national sovereignty. But as communists, we don't just lament, comrades. Communists don't lament. If in your branch you spend the whole time lamenting, you are not a communist branch. I don't know what you are. We said, nevertheless, much as we don't like this process, but we will engage the document. and show where its weaknesses are as part of our own contribution to the economy. What we are also pointing out, you will get this political report, by the way. What we're also pointing out is that part of the global situation, apart from austeritization, is what are known as the trade wars, especially between the United States and China. Just to summarize what is here in this document, the United States in the main has been imposing tariffs on many of the products that the United States is importing from China. And China has been also doing the same in response to what the United States is saying. Now, the Trump government says, we don't want Huawei. And Comrade Soli, that's the reason why I use a Huawei. Because Trump doesn't like the Huawei. What is Trump saying? Trump is saying China is using Huawei to collect intelligence. And Huawei is a project of the Chinese government. But what Trump doesn't say is that Apple also is the project of the US government and the iPhone. And also we know that our data, all those of us with iPhones, our data is actually sitting somewhere, is a source of intelligence for the US government. So what's different between what China may be doing and what the United States is doing? The issue actually is not the security issues as the United States is saying. It's because China is beginning to move ahead in what are known as fifth generation technologies called the 5G, from the 4G to the 5G. And any country that will actually control 5G technologies is likely actually to dominate economically. And so the empire is afraid, which is the United States, that it may be beginning to lose its economic hegemony. That is what is at the heart of the trade wars that the media doesn't even tell us, by the way, about. Don't look at me badly. It's just a fact. You are not telling us this real story as to what is actually behind these trade wars. Of course, we are raising this because we are not immune. If you impose tariffs on China, it does affect us as South Africa in those areas where we trade with China, for instance. Apart from the fact that the import duties that the United States has slapped on aluminum and steel has also been affecting us as South Africa, because those are some of our industries that are actually exporting. So, Comrade Rob Davis, our member of the Central Committee, has just published a book titled The Politics of Trade in the Era of Hyperglobalization, and is doing a wonderful analysis of these trade wars. And it's clear, as Comrade Rob says, that part of the global struggles at the moment are going to be on the terrain of trade wars. In Europe, at the moment, Brexit has become a key development in the current global era. The vote by the British to move out of the European Union. It's a big issue at the moment. And this is indeed also reshaping politics, both in the United Kingdom and Western Europe. And as Comrade Rob suggests, by definition, Brexit stands for a rejection of a regional integration arrangement. In our own continent, we have signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, And we want to say that as the SACP, we've got to pay close attention to this. We don't have time to do that in this political report, but we need to pay close attention to this in terms of its potential advantages as well as disadvantages. But in all what we do, comrades, as the SACP, as you heard from the messages of support last night, we remain steadfast in our solidarity with the African continent, and particularly with struggles for the completion of freedom and liberation in a number of African countries. That's why we stand firm in support of democracy in Swaziland. We stand firm in support of independence for the Sahrawi Republic and our solidarity with Polisario. We stand firm in the support of the Sudanese people, both the Sudan as well as South Sudan. We are concerned about the ongoing wars and confrontation in the south of Sudan. We must do all we can also to make our own contribution. We appreciate what our government is doing to try and find peace in South Sudan. Also, our solidarity with the situation of our people in southern Cameroon. And of course, at this point in time, we also wish to express our solidarity again with the people of Palestine. Part of the global reality at the moment, comrades, that this Special National Congress has got to grapple with is that, let's be frank, despite some progressive struggles waged in places like Latin America today, the global environment is hostile to left-wing movements. Instead, in many parts of Europe, for instance, we are seeing the emergence of neo-fascist organizations. And amongst other things, this calls for deepening and strengthening rather than weakening alliances in our domestic situations, especially in the developing world. It's not a luxury. Just like trade union international solidarity becomes even more important today, even more so in the light of some of the new technologies that are likely to threaten the future of work. So it's not a luxury to call for deepening international trade union solidarity today. That's why in Latin America, the Trump administration is trying to roll back the many advances that have been made in some of the countries. Hence, we are reaffirming our solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, the people of Venezuela, Bolivia, and Nicaragua, amongst others, as the South African Communist Party. Now, in our discussions then, we have to say, how is this international and global context affecting us, and further elaborate on the issues that we highlight in this political report. Let's now come back to beginning to touch on some of our resolutions that we adopted at our 14th National Congress. Now, we want to start with the resolution on state and popular power. Now, we like our song, Sifuna State Power. Okay? Fine. But also we must remember that songs are like catchphrases. We must not lose the content in our songs, which we must sing. But we must always maintain analytical alertness. The reason why we are saying this is because, comrades, when we talk about state and state power, we must understand it from a Marxist-Leninist angle. Simply put, election victories, important as they are, do not necessarily constitute control over state and state power. Therefore, contesting elections alone does not necessarily amount to contesting state power as a whole. It's important for this Special National Congress that, as we report on and discuss our state and popular power resolution, to understand this reality that there is a difference, though there is a relationship between state power and elections. And the latest best example of that is Bolivia. President Comrade Morales in Bolivia wins an election, the last election, wins it hands down. But an army general tells him to step down. Not only does he step down, he is forced to flee to Mexico, having won an election. Now, that's the best definition of what we are talking about, because you can win an election, but if you don't control the army, you don't have the totality of the state power that you think you are controlling. If you don't have control over other sections, even in our own revolution at the moment, the struggle that we are waging as an alliance, largely also it's about that. So it's very important, therefore, that we analyze our song as to what the content of that song actually should be about. It's for this reason, comrades, that our party program, South African Road to Socialism, says the working class must seek to build its hegemony and influence in all key sites of power. It doesn't mention one. It says it's in the state, it's in the economy, it's in the workplace, it's ideologically, it's in the international situation, and in relation to the environment. Those are the sites of struggle. And we must understand that in waging a working class struggle for socialism, we need to be waging struggles in all those terrains. That's our South African road to socialism. By the way, the Central Committee is concerned that we are not studying this program as the party in all our structures in as detailed a manner that we should be. Our South African road to socialism, in fact, is one of the most thorough documents to help us understand the South African revolution and its challenges. Let's report back now on our resolution on state power. And I must just explain that I will report on parts of that and leave the rest, and I'll explain just now, to the organizational report, because that resolution both had political aspects as well as what we would call organizational aspects. Let us read our resolution, comrades. The Central Committee has instructed me to do so, to read the whole resolution on state power. All right, I start, quote, let me drink some water. Cheers to our resolution. Quote, believing that the issue of state power is a central question of any revolution, that the state cannot be transformed, and that progressive state power cannot be consolidated or defended without active popular and working class power organized both within and outside the state. That a central strategic challenge of the current South African revolution is the consolidation of state power and popular power capable of driving a radical second phase of the National Democratic Revolution as the most direct route to socialism in South Africa. That, while the ANC historically has played an outstanding role as the major vehicle for uniting the key components of a national democratic movement, the ANC does not own the NDR, and its leadership role is one that has got to be earned in practice. That in the current fluid reality, the SACP must be guided by, 1, strategic consistency.
We have Dr. Blade Nzimande there, the SACP General Secretary, presenting the political report at the party's special National Congress, saying, among other things, that the aim
to provide a concrete analysis of the concrete situation. 3, tactical flexibility. The ability not to be caught flat-footed while still being guided by revolutionary strategic consistency. Akuyena uNzimande ngisafunda resolution. Believing that Lenin's observation that a victory cannot be won without a vanguard. Victory cannot be won with a vanguard alone is relevant to our own reality. And that throwing the vanguard into the decisive battle before the entire class, the broad masses, are ready would be a grave mistake. Noting that, I'm continuing with the resolution. Noting that the important revolutionary advances of the mid-1990s, the abolition of the institutions of white minority rule, the inauguration of key elements of majority rule via the ballot, and the passing of a progressive constitution are now threatened with erosion. The danger of the erosion of our constitutional democracy is a consequence of both the failure to use the democratic bridgehead to advance decisively on a second radical phase of the NDR to transform the structural political economy legacy of colonialism and apartheid, and of a subjective deterioration within much of government and the liberation movement. This is noting that this deterioration is epitomized in its most aggressive form by the phenomenon of private corporate capture of the state, involving the parasitic looting of public resources. These realities have, amongst other things, contributed to a declining electoral trajectory for the ANC, which, unless arrested, can lead to the ANC losing its majority party status to an opportunist coalition of opposition forces, with further deeply negative consequences for the advance, deepening, and defense of the NDR. Further noting that the SACP has a long history of electoral engagement, and that since 1994, the SACP has actively engaged in successive national, provincial, and local government elections within the context of the ANC-led alliance. The SACP has actively contributed to the development of ANC election manifestos, to the list selection processes, and to active electoral campaigning. The SACP has also campaigned for and with the ANC, with our own independent Red Brigade cadres, and with our own electoral posters and flyers. Further noting that there is a strong feeling within the SACP that too often the SACP is used by the ANC during the election campaigns only to be marginalized post-elections. While this feeling may be more or less strong in different localities, it is a widespread and commonly shared view within the ranks of the SACP. further noting that the 2007 12th National Congress of the SACP resolved that while the SACP, it's a quote within a quote, what our 12th Congress National Resolution was saying. While the SACP is not, nor will it become, a narrowly electoralist formation, the SACP must contest elections within the context of a reconfigured alliance. The resolution left open the different modalities under which the SACP might contest elections, either on an ANC ticket but with a reconfigured alliance, or in the context of a reconfigured alliance under the banner of the SACP but with a view to post-election coalitions with the ANC. Further noting that the 13th National Congress in 2012 reaffirmed this 2007 resolution. That initial but uneven progress after 2007 in driving forward a reconfigured alliance has now stalled and in many respects has broken down. That even the earlier progress in reconfiguring a more effective alliance was never implemented in many subnational levels. Are we still at one? This is you talking, not Unzimand. Further noting that the capacity of the ANC in particular to lead a process of self-renewal and regeneration, and therefore to effectively play a unifying role in a reconfigured alliance, remains uncertain. That once more the SACP has played an active and sometimes leading role in the recent period in building patriotic and united fronts in the struggle against state capture and rampant corruption, for instance. Now, can I just say something? This part of the resolution, which is talking about the role played by the party on patriotic and united fronts, we must remind ourselves, because some comrades were insulting Comrade Usoli, our first deputy GS, when he was marching with a whole lot of other people. He was sent by us because it was part of us saying, where the people are, we must be there, we must not run away from them. But we were not doing that in support of the opposition. We were doing that in support to say, let's unite a whole range of people. And it's important that we say that. Right. Now let me continue. Therefore resolved. Now this is our resolved part at our 2017 14th Congress. That the SACP must actively contest elections. Hayi ke before ngiqhubeka ama comrades ethika amaningi ayaphela ke la. That's why they stop and say hooray. Sifuna state power. They end here. Comrades, the resolution does not end here. Let me continue. What the resolution? Therefore resolves that the modality through which we contest elections may or may not be within the umbrella of a reconfigured alliance. That in principle we remain firmly committed to a revolutionary national democratic alliance and a reconfigured alliance that reaffirms in policy as well as in practice the ANC's own 2007 National Conference resolution, which said, and we quote it here, the alliance is the strategic political center and not the ANC on its own. Resolves that the SACP has a leadership role in the struggle to build a reconfigured alliance while recognizing that we cannot place all of our hopes and expectations solely on a favorable outcome in this regard. That both for electoral purposes and for defending, deepening and advancing a radical second phase of the NDR, the SACP must play an active role and leadership role in the consolidation of a left popular front of working class and progressive forces. That to take all of this work forward, the 14th Congress mandates the Central Committee to establish a roadmap that must be adopted with clear indicative timelines by the forthcoming augmented CC, which was to be the augmented CC of December 2017. Now I continue. This roadmap must include the following elements. 1, a program of active engagements with our alliance partners and with a wide range of working class and progressive forces to share and to test the SACP's perspectives. Particular but not exclusive, attention must be paid to COSATU and its affiliates. These engagements, I want to underline this, I'm reading. These engagements must be at all levels: national, provincial, and local. 2, based on these engagements, it's part of the roadmap. Based on these engagements, the SACP must play a leading role in developing a common platform for a left popular front of working class and progressive forces. Part of the roadmap says, linked to the SACP's organizational review process, conduct a thorough and ongoing audit of the SACP's organizational capacity, involving a scientific, fact-based evaluation of the strength and influence of our formations, including our VD-based branches. Regular reports must be tabled in each central committee, and lower structures must be continuously briefed on progress. The last part, the Special National Congress of the SACP must receive a comprehensive report on the roadmap process and resolve on the way forward. Unquote. Unquote. That's your resolution. Now, comrades, we are fully reproducing this resolution. You may have been bored when I go through it. Two main reasons why we are doing that. Firstly, it is important that we refresh ourselves about what the resolution says. Secondly, as the Central Committee, we have been concerned that in some of our structures, this resolution has either been misread or misinterpreted. Let's speak the truth as the Central Committee. Some of our own leaders in the provinces have been afraid to explain this resolution because the singing was too loud. On we want state power, we want to contest now. So not being bold enough to say, here is what our resolution says. That's our assessment as the Central Committee. In one instance, a few district council meetings did not proceed or discuss our resolution because it was said there is no Central Committee member around. Kanjani? How can it be when we've got so many members of the provincial executive committees who would have explained this resolution? Now, the lesson we must learn as the Communist Party, we must all stand for the resolutions that we've taken and be able to explain and defend them amongst our structures. As a result, there was a feeling that the Central Committee is changing the resolutions. We never changed any resolution. We are going to be reporting now on the basis of this resolution as we have just read it. But let's recap a few things, key things that our resolution is saying. Our resolution defines, and it's clear on the necessity of the alliance to continue. There is no SACP resolution which says we must end the alliance. Anyone within our ranks who says that is telling a lie. Nowhere in this resolution do we say that. We are saying that, but what we are saying is that, but we need going forward a reconfigured alliance, And the resolution directs us to say, go and engage at all levels on this matter of a reconfigured alliance, which is what we have done, which is what was contained in the roadmap. The resolution also emphasizes the necessity to build not just the SACP, but the motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution, and to mobilize wider progressive sections of our society under the banner of a left popular front. The resolution also emphasizing the need to unite the working class and build working class power. Now, the resolution also reminds us of what Lenin said, that it is suicidal to throw the vanguard party into decisive battles alone, without the rest of the working class with it. Now, we want the Special National Congress to discuss this matter and assess this matter. Is the class that we claim to represent us with us on this? If not, where is it? You know, you can't wake up because you are a party leader at whatever level and think that because you think our resolution says this, and you simply fold your arms and think that the rest of the class which you represent also thinks exactly like you think. That's why the resolution calls for us to engage. Now, let me table some aspects of the report, because on the issue of assessing the party and its organizational capacity, that is the task as required by this resolution. It's in the organizational report. Now, following the adoption of this resolution, as the SACP at Central Committee level, we started engagements within the alliance for its reconfiguration. 4 discussion papers were produced. The first was a base document developed by the SACP. The second was produced by COSATU, which supported reconfiguration. The third paper was produced by the ANC in response to the SACP and COSATU papers. And these papers are part of your Congress documentation. Please read them, so that you test what is here is what you see in those documents. The engagement continued in the alliance until the Alliance Political Council came up with a common framework on the reconfiguration, which we want to report about today. The core of what we've agreed upon at the last 2 Alliance Political Council meetings on reconfiguration include the following points. 1, we have agreed that the National Democratic Revolution is our shared strategy of struggle and societal transformation, and the Freedom Charter as its basic program. Also, we have agreed that the strategic centrality of the alliance and collective leadership in driving the National Democratic Revolution is key. We have agreed also on meaningful consultation that seeks to attain consensus on policy direction and other key decisions, especially in relation to organs of state. We have also agreed in this framework document on regular alliance meetings to give practical effect to consensus-seeking consultation in driving the NDR, thus developing and implementing common programs and joint campaigns. We have also agreed on regular meetings, including monthly Alliance Secretariat meetings, quarterly Alliance Political Council meetings, at least 1 Strategic Planning Alliance Summit per annum, the convening of other focused alliance summits, which may be focusing on sectoral issues as and when it is necessary, and alliance bilateral sessions, as well as the establishment of joint alliance committees working groups or task teams on policy programs and campaigns. We have also agreed to the establishment of an Alliance Deployment and Accountability Commission and support its work. We have also agreed in approaching elections as an ANC-led Common Alliance platform with alliance representation on electoral lists and related deployments. Also agreed on recognizing the class leadership of the working class as the main motive force of the National Democratic Revolution and organizational leadership of the ANC. And also that the reconfiguration of the alliance and all its structural modalities that I have outlined and modus operandi at the national level must be replicated at all subnational levels. So all these things we say must be there at national level, they must be there at provincial level, they must be there as much as is possible at district level and at branch level. Now, this alliance framework document, nevertheless, has got to go back to each of the alliance components. We are tabling it at this special National Congress so that you discuss it and say, is this what we want? The ANC is going to do the same. SANCO is going to do the same, hopefully. COSATU is going to do the same. But comrades, we can't approach our revolutionary alliance as if it is the CCMA. A negotiated deal and contract, which then from now onwards we're going to start saying, has there been a monthly alliance secretariat? Tick. Where are sectoral summits? No. And therefore, things come to a head. You know, as revolutionaries, we must understand. If the ANC says it is biased towards the working class and it recognizes the working class as the main motive force, that's not enough. The working class has to be organized as a motive force. If it is not organized as a motive force, it's meaningless for the ANC to say it recognizes the working class as the main motive force. A motive force only acts as a motive force if it is organized as such. Now, that's why I'm saying we mustn't treat this as a CCMA thing. We must, as the South African Communist Party, work to mobilize the working class and strengthen it so that it acts as the principal motive force of the National Democratic Revolution. Now, we believe, comrades, there is progress that we've made with this document as it stands on reconfiguration, that if we can do even half of these things, it will go a long way in addressing many of the problems. But we must remember what unites the alliance. It's not a CCMA type agreement. It's program of action on the ground. That's what unites us. Therefore, we are saying as the Central Committee to this Special National Congress, let's reaffirm our resolution as I have read it. And also, the Central Committee is of the view that we must maintain ANC-led electoral lists. You must listen to this section very carefully. However, where, like with the forthcoming local government election, where the agreed upon spirit of the reconfiguration of the alliance, as well as consensus-seeking consultation, is undermined, we urge our structures to report that to the Central Committee with recommendations. That where you feel that you are marginalized, you are not participating, report to the Central Committee with recommendations on what is to be done. What is to be done may include that in a place like Maluti Apofung, honestly, as allies, we cannot, Comrade DSG, support what the ANC is doing there. It's a mess up. It's corruption. We can't accept that. We can't campaign for the ANC in local election government being in that state, that municipality. No ways. Now, the reason why we are not saying where it's not happening, let's contest separately. It may happen that we may decide to do the same, but let that be done with the authority of the Central Committee. So that we don't just have a situation where we have everything happening on the ground. What we are prepared to say here is that we are no longer prepared as the South African Communist Party to accept imposed local government candidates on us. Asizuyivuma maqabane. For the sake of the ANC itself, don't come and present us with a candidate councillor who is being pushed by one faction. Sikhathele ukusupporta ama-factions. The other thing, by the way, we want to raise in the Special National Congress, we must also reflect on ourselves. We haven't come here to criticize the ANC. We must reflect on ourselves. Kwathina, sometimes we allow this thing. When the ANC is to have a conference, we get canvassed, by the way, as allies, by factions. So we decide we support one faction, it wins the conference, it works together with us for a while and dumps us. Next time we are fed up with this faction, they dumped us. Now we are going with this faction, we work with them, it wins the election, after a year or two, it dumps us. For how long are we going to be in this situation? For as long as we don't build strong working class power on the ground, we will continue to be like this, and this must come to an end. We are not by saying so, comrades, that we don't want to work with comrades and the leadership in the ANC, not in a factional way, but a leadership that is doing what we think needs to be done. We support the leadership of President Ramaphosa, not as a blank check, because it's committed to fighting corruption. And we said we're going to support and work with this leadership. If it becomes another leadership that changes from that direction, we retain our right to review that and what is it that needs to be done. Kodwa ke lento my comrades, comrade DSG, I'm not singling you out. No, it's because when we are here, you are leading the ANC delegation. We are being lobbied, comrade DSG, big time. But also we need to say, how do we behave? Now, we want you to consider this proposal from the Central Committee, comrades. It's not an imposition what we are saying now about our approach to the forthcoming local government elections. Go and discuss it in the commissions. Now, let me move to the section then of the political report that deals with the motive forces and their state of organization in the different sides of power. Now, this section of the report actually talks about some aspects or some of the pillars of the South African road to socialism. Ours is a struggle for socialism. That's our anchor. The National Democratic Revolution is our most direct route to socialism. If things do not go right in the National Democratic Revolution, we cannot simply walk away from the National Democratic Revolution because that's our most direct route to socialism. We must seek to struggle and engage and correct. That is why the comrades who are telling us that we mustn't comment about the ANC, no, we disagree. If the ANC is heading the forces that are leading the National Democratic Revolution, we expect it to behave in a particular way. So we will comment about the ANC. Usually the people who say we mustn't comment about the ANC, I don't know how to put this in English. Yilaba benza imkhuba. It's the people who are doing the wrong things who do not want us to comment. I won't mention names. Some of them, we were working together with them to Pulukwane conference. But after that, when they decided to do their own things, they say, SACP can't spend all its time commenting about the ANC. We don't spend all our time commenting about the ANC, but we have a right to comment about the ANC. We have also not stopped the ANC to comment about its allies and how its allies behave. Comrades, we want to select, just to focus on a few of the pillars of SARS, we want to start with the community. There is a pillar of SARS that talks about the community as a key site and terrain of struggle. As the SACP, we have correctly resuscitated the Marxist idea of, or concept of social reproduction. I'll explain this just now. The perspective of social reproduction enables an understanding of the impact of the crisis of capitalism on households, communities, and in the whole of society. In this regard, we have pointed out as the Central Committee that we are in the midst of a crisis of social reproduction, arising out of the systemic problems of high levels of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Now, the concept of the crisis of social reproduction basically refers to increasing inability of households and communities to make ends meet, to put it simply. Kuyahlushekwa emndenini yakithi nemphakathi yakithi. There is poverty, there is a struggle to make ends meet because of high unemployment, amongst other things. Now, social reproduction is attempts by households to make themselves to see the next day, to eat, and to do the things that are supposed to be done so that you can sleep and wake up the following day. That's the simple way of trying to characterize social reproduction. Now, in capitalist societies, the burden of social reproduction, of making ends meet, sits with women. Women are the ones, as I'm talking now, women are the ones who must cook, who must prepare everything in the household, in addition must look after the sick and the vulnerable. In fact, women in our communities, today, if we go out of here and say, let's just go out to, what's the nearest township, Mapaila, when I'm towards Gauteng? Tembisa, yeah, Ngagin. La sasazi ukuthi kugcwele otsotsi khona sibasazi. If you go to Tembisa now, and there's a school governing bodies, I can bet you my last half a cent, 80% of those people attending the school governing body will be women. If you go to a Stockfellen or in a burial society, no, Baba, we are not there. It's women. In other words, it's women who are carrying the burden of the social reproduction of households and communities in crisis. Now, you see, comrades, this is an important terrain of struggle. In fact, when we are talking about organizing women or fighting the scourge of gender-based violence, that's why we should be organizing women. We should organize women where they are, and not to think of some abstract place where we must organize them. When we are talking about building a women's movement, we must go to churches, we must go to school governing bodies, we must go to Stockfells, we must go exactly where they are. These are important sites for organizing women, because they are the ones who really carry the burden of social reproduction through also what we call unpaid labor. Now, some of our main comrades, when you talk about unpaid labor of women, they say, yeah, Communist Party non demand, they want us now to pay our wives. if they wash for us. No, we are not saying that. What we are saying is that household chores and labor must be shared between men and women. That's what we mean. Can't be that it's only one sector in society. Ngiyabezwa abanye manje uyabezwa bayavunga. Hey. Kanti silaphila. We are in the gathering of the South African Communist Party. But comrades, the other sector of society that is carrying the burden of the crisis of social reproduction is the youth. It's for this reason that even now, when we go to Tembisa again, the streets are full, but it's a Tuesday today. It's full of young people. When we see protests, service delivery protests, as they are often called, is the youth, and it's unemployed youth that is in the forefront, which also, by the way, is faced with the scourge of drugs and substance abuse. Now, for the YCL and the Progressive Youth Alliance, organizing in communities means organizing young people. Because we must not just see young people and women, by the way, as victims. If organized, they are not victims, but they are able to change their own conditions that affects them. There are many things we don't do as communists. In any community, you normally have a sports body or some cultural organizations. To what extent are our VD branches linking with those structures? As part of organization and mobilization of communities. Now, even now, comrades, some of the government services to our communities, instead of becoming a source of development, they become a source of tension. Because in the main, between a government service and a community, there usually is a middleman, and it's usually a man who has been given a tender to deliver that service, even where there is no reason for such an arrangement. Why should we be actually giving out tenders for school feeding schemes when we could do it ourselves as communities to feed our own children? But we allow this thing. We have long resolved, all of us, to say that cleaning of the areas in which we stay, which are dirty, by the way, must not be given out as a tender. Where are our own cooperatives and for communities themselves to be able to clean their own? These are areas that we should be attending to as part of this site of struggle called the communities. You know, comrades, most of what we call service delivery protests, whether you are there or you are watching scenes on television, there is lots of destruction of property. There are often genuine grievances that are raised by communities, but there is no proper principled leadership that is able to guide that. At this rate at which these protests are happening, without us as the alliance being there to lead this, we are breeding a counter-revolution. We are breeding a counter-revolution that will turn against us. Now, Comrade Sol is going to talk about this. What's the state of our branches? We know that our VD branches are existing by name. Our VD-based branches as the SACP. Some of them are preoccupied about what's happening in the ANC branch. Some of them are made up of all those members of the ANC who are angry against the ANC branch. They've been chucked out. And so all that an SACP VD-based branch is doing is lamenting about the state of the ANC instead of organizing communities. Let's accept that. It's nice to criticize the Central Committee. All of us, we need to reflect. But we know, of course, that there are problems in ANC branches. We can't deny that. There's gatekeeping. We have ANC branches who only meet if there is only going to be a regional conference. And often as a faction, and whoever is not in that faction won't get an ANC membership card. We know that that happens. But what do we do? That is why we are saying the Central Committee has adopted the slogan that hopefully this Congress will adopt. Every communist, a community activist. That's how we are summarizing this. A VD branch of the SACP that's preoccupied with matters that have got nothing to do with communities. The moment there is organization in communities, that VD branch will wake up, including an ANC branch. There's no ANC branch which can ignore community organization in its own area. If we are able to organize, you are then all able to confront gatekeeping by reaching out to the communities. Every communist, a community activist. That's what we are saying, comrades, as the Central Committee, as part of organizing in our communities. And which means, therefore, the SACP must build a cadre that is able to operate and organize in communities. Let me move to the last but one, well, last three areas that the Central Committee has asked me to table before you here. Let's talk about the economy. And we want the Special National Congress to talk about the economy. What I'm going to say here is introducing the issues. Comrades, in our reflection as the Central Committee since our Congress in July 2017, we are coming to the conclusion that the party's approach to the economic challenges must anchor itself around that we are neither for parasitic state capture networks nor for neoliberalism. Okay? We must continue to fight against state capture and looting that is happening in the state. But we must also not allow that fight against state capture to be converted into the creation of new neoliberal looting networks. For instance, we don't question the commitment of the President of the ANC and the President of the Republic to lead this effort. But at the same time, we are concerned that under that banner of cleaning that the President is leading, there are people who are seeing an opportunity that because SAA was corrupt in the past, so today, therefore, we must use the fact that we are addressing corruption in order to buy SAA, to get SAA privatized. That we cannot allow. That summarizes what our point. We are neither for state capture nor for neoliberalism. What are we for? We are for a developmental path. That is what we are about as the South African Communist Party. Now, in the political report, we also talk about something that I've already spoken about, by the way. It's written here, you will see it. The issue of debt. Karl Marx, by the way, in Capital Volume 1, defined national debt very nicely. And let me quote, national debts often mark with their stamp the capitalistic era. The only part of the so-called national wealth that actually enters into the collective possessions of modern peoples is their national debt. Public credit becomes the credo of capital, unquote. This observation by Marx, of course, is very important, but I have already spoken about these matters as covered in our political report. But comrades, the political report also uses this opportunity to try and say, let's understand why we are where we are economically, properly, where the problem starts. We don't want to deny that we inherited a state and an economy whose character was that of a capitalist economy based on benefiting a white minority in the main. We cannot start anywhere else other than there. But if we were to come closer, therefore, in fact, the issue of privatization was started by the de Klerk government in the late apartheid period, where they started privatizing Sasol and ISCO, now known as ArcelorMittal. But unfortunately, it was our own government which completed that privatization. Because, as we said, the genesis of some of the problems of state-owned enterprises today does not start now or recently. It started with the adoption of a neoliberal economic policy called GEAR in 1996. We oppose that because neoliberalism never benefits the poor and GEAR never benefited the working class. That's why we spoke of job loss growth. That's why we don't like this thing today. You know, comrades, so we fought against privatization as the Communist Party together with the COSATU. We fought against it. Certain decisions were not taken that were supposed to be taken in the 1990s into the 2000s because there was an intention to privatize. 1998 energy policy told us that we needed to do certain things. Even in the early 2000s, we were told that ESCOM power stations must be maintained, must be renewed, and we must also build extra generation capacity. We did not do that because we wanted to privatize. So today we are sitting now in the middle of load shedding. There is nothing magical. It doesn't come from the top there. It's our own failure that is leading to this load shedding. And that's where it starts. What did we do with our state-owned enterprises? We tried to prescribe to them and said, you will focus on our core business. Today, Comrade Jesse, we have deployed me to be Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology. You know why there was fees must fall? Because we did not invest in infrastructure and students, including student accommodation, because of neoliberal policies. And it was a cruel justice that I, as a minister, had actually to deal with the failures of GEAR and having to face the wrath of the students through fees must fall. Having said that, we should have invested in actually doing that. That was the source. But then what happened? What happened was we privatized telecom as well, by the way, largely. Then this caused problems. The other thing was just the arrogance. And one is seeing elements of that now. No, we know what is right. You know, the SACP and COSATU belongs to a Soviet era. They don't know what is wanted. We know what is wanted. We can't go back to neoliberalism in trying to sort the issue facing state-owned enterprises today. We cannot do that. In fact, that battle over privatization is what caused what nearly became a rupture in the alliance, which set us on a path, which we normally travel towards Polokwane. SACP and COSATU were angry about the direction of economic policy. We even sent a message to the ANC conference, please change your policies or change leadership. That's what we said going to Polokwane, Comrade Sol. There was change of leadership. We were all going together. We said hallelujah at Polokwane. And to privatization, we were all agreed. Little did we know that that coalition of the wounded, as the media called us, in Polokwane, which was to unravel in 10 years' time. By 2017, it unraveled completely. Saxabana sodwa. Because we thought we were all wanting the state-owned enterprises to remain in the hands of the state so that they help us to transform our economy, when some of our own comrades have had other ideas. They oppose privatization because they want those state-owned enterprises to remain in the hands of the state so that they can be looted. Now, let's not fool ourselves. Let's not fool ourselves. That is why we must give content. The lesson we must learn from that. If we say state-owned enterprises must remain in the hands of the state, we must be clear also about what is to be done, and not just be satisfied that they are in the hands of the state. We must say they must be in the hands of the state so that we do A, B, C, D. Otherwise, we may think we are sharing the same strategic objective, when in fact we are not. Here is another thing also that happened, by the way, post-1994, which we need to understand so that we understand where we are. We have a constitution that is very good, respected worldwide, which commits to changing the lives of the majority of our people for the better. But as the SACP we have said, our transition in 1994, our democratic breakthrough, gave us our democracy and a good constitution, but with an unfunded mandate. We had a good constitution, but we did not have enough money to actually realize that constitution. Because as we transitioned to our democracy, all those South African companies that were isolated under sanctions, they became liberated and they left South Africa. First 10 years of our democracy, billions of rands left our shores, and some of our big companies listed in the London and the New York Stock Exchange. Also as a result of our liberalization policies. So here we had a beautiful constitution but no mandate. Now this is a problem, comrades, often of many post-colonial, for want of a better term, or developing countries, especially in our continent, that have attained their independence. You have a new elite coming into power that has some political power, but with no economic power. That's why even the idea of post-colonial is not correct, because it doesn't capture the fact that there is continuity with colonialism, because economic power still remains with the same old bourgeoisie. We were also faced with the same challenge. We must understand that. And this is part of what we are still trying to transform today. Now you're asking me to make an announcement about a Range Rover. NF 999 GP, black Range Rover. Please come and close the windows and lock the car. That's from Ekurhuleni Metropolis. NF 999 GP. What?
The contradiction. I'm only love a person. Middle class.
Well, comrades, well, perhaps that's a reflection that one of the single most important achievements of the ANC government was the creation of the black middle class, which drive Range Rovers. It's inevitable, I guess. There is no society without a middle class. Now, the issue is that the working class must be leading that society, but you can't run away that you will have a middle class. Now, comrades, one of the things that we picked up as the SACP post-94 about our economy was the necessity to transform the financial sector. We won major battles about that campaign. Mzansi account, regulation of the credit bureau, but we failed, Comrade Zola, General Secretary Lanat. We failed to systemically transform the financial sector. And we don't want to be lamenting. One of our weaknesses was that the trade union movement didn't go as far as we had expected it to go, especially on the investment and use of provident and pension funds in our economy. That's the battle we must still take over. That is why the PIC has been funding some of all these shenanigans that it has been funding, some of them. Because the working class has just allowed its own resources to be invested without itself making a say of how that investment needs to be done. What is it that's driving the Johannesburg Stock Exchange? It's your own insurance policies and your pension and provident funds. Look at Old Mutual now. There are these little fights in Old Mutual, skirmishes. The working class is folding its arms, watching. Yet it's your money that makes 12% of Old Mutual. You shouldn't otherwise be quiet about that. You should actually be taking up those matters. Now, that's the struggle we are saying we need to go back to as the working class to take up the issue of the transformation of the financial sector. I've already warned, comrades, the political report warns that we must not allow a return to neoliberalism. Definitely not. Our task as the party and COSATU needs to focus on that. Ngiyaqeda manje Tishomku. Ungangibuki kabi. If I was Comrade Ugwala, I would say you must tie a rope behind my back so that you just pull it to tell me that time is over now. The political report then, comrades, tables some things that you need to go and discuss in relation to transforming the economy. Within this framework of neither the parasitic networks nor neoliberalism. And what is our developmental path, therefore? Here are some of the things. I'm not going to read all of them. We are saying we must return to the financial sector campaign in a big way. We won consumer demands. It was nice to regulate the credit bureau. Even sections of the middle classes who are indebted supported us. But that's not sustainable unless we change systemically the sector. We must also build a publicly controlled banking sector. We must build a cooperatively owned banking sector. We must also continue to campaign for strict regulation and management of capital account. We must push for prescribed assets, where our monies are being invested and how, especially workers' monies. We have to expand the mandate of the Reserve Bank. We don't understand why there is resistance to Reserve Bank being its mandate expanded to include employment creation. Why is there resistance? Really, who is resisting this? If we say unemployment is one of the biggest problems that we have in this country, why is the Reserve Bank not prioritizing that? We can't just be repeating this all the time. We need to struggle for that, to expand. We need other broader economic interventions. State-owned enterprises, comrades, go to your commissions and tell us what to do. The other debate now we need to resurface. I was deployed at some stage. Now no palaweku. Angimona ama-comrades esatha ukutapha. At some stage I was deployed to be Minister of Transport. Comrade Jeff knows this. Something very strange there. PRASA belongs to the Department of Transport. But some of the railway lines it uses are owned by Transnet, which belongs to the Department of Public Enterprises. It's another department in the same space. Should we not really be asking the question on whether these state-owned enterprises shouldn't go back to their policy departments? You know, as Minister of Transport, I used to be insulted, Comrade Jesse, about SAA, yet I had nothing to do with SAA. Nothing. It's things that actually we need to be re-looking at. Department of Transport regulates the awards of licenses of aircraft that flies in and out of South Africa, but it's not in charge of SAA. And part of what it's killing the SAA is the allocation of those flight routes. And even basic things, by the way, that we need to check about how we operate. Why is it that many public servants who fly every week between Cape Town, between Johannesburg and Cape Town, they fly British Airways? Why is it not compulsory that all government employees must fly SAA? But SAA also must be smart. Expensive. They mustn't become this hugely expensive that it becomes unaffordable. Also, as the SACP, we are concerned about the recent behavior of the SAA board and management. I've never in my life, Comrade Tulas, working with workers and trade unions, seen a management and board so excited about a strike more than the unions. The SAA, they were so excited over the Satau, NUMSA, everybody. Very excited. You could see that they needed that strike in order to justify taking SAA to where we don't want SAA to go to. Now, we want to make this call, comrades. We want to make this two calls the Central Committee political report is making. Unless the working class organizes itself as a motive force, we are not going to advance our struggle for socialism or to drive a more radical. We are asking this Special National Congress to endorse this proposal from the Central Committee, that in the new year, we engage COSATU and other progressive unions to call a conference or a summit of all progressive trade unions in the country. Not to discuss one federation, we're still committed to that. Maybe there's still a lot more that needs to be done. But to agree on four, Comrade Begi, 4 or 5 common demands that affects the unions across the board. That's why we welcome COSATU's call. So we need this bringing together of all the trade unions. Whether you like each other or not, it's neither here nor there. Unless you do that, we are going to sink. Unless you do that, we're going to sink. The second call that we are making is that we do need to go and convene a big meeting, and we should do this ideally as an alliance of all progressive community social organizations. As a start, bring under one roof the churches, sports organizations, and a whole lot of other organizations and NGOs to do a few things. that are common. Firstly, to fight the struggle against gender discrimination and gender-based violence. It's clear. As the SACP, we have launched 2 campaigns under Red October banner on fighting gender-based violence. It's a difficult struggle. And one of the reasons why it is difficult, we are fighting it in a fragmented way. We are fighting it in a fragmented way. We need to be convening something big. Everybody who will be involved to say, we need to fight gender-based violence. We need to fight the issue of youth unemployment. We need to fight drug and substance abuse in our communities. We need to fight to create poverty alleviation mechanisms so that we are able to fight the crisis of social reproduction. And we need to come together to fight for NHI, the National Health Insurance. You know, this thing of bringing together trade unions and also to bring together community organizations is also going to make us do one thing which we used to do very well in the 80s. We have lost it. Worker Community Alliance. Today you find sometimes communities going against a legitimate worker struggles because there's been no engagement between communities and trade unions. That's what we actually need to do if we are to build what we want to build. The last issue. All these are very nice things that the Central Committee is saying. But we are not going to do them. This is the last section. Unless we build the capacity of the South African Communist Party to act as a vanguard party. That's where Comrade Soli, when he gives his report, is going to be reflecting on aspects of our organization. But it's important that in this political report, the Central Committee asked me to say this. Do we have the capacity to truly act as a vanguard party as the SACP? These are the things that we must prioritize. Firstly, we have to prioritize political education. It's an indictment that we don't have a political school as the South African Communist Party. It is a huge indictment. And we want the commission dealing with organization to tell us how do we do that. I know my branch in Johannesburg, which I'm leaving unfortunately because I've moved, the Esther Pazel branch. They've got what it calls Red Thursdays. Are they here? Party Joburg district. Ubashiyele ngemuva weBhungane. The Esther Pazel branch. That's my branch. They have Red Thursday. Every Thursday there is a political education school in a branch. And it's not impossible to do that. It doesn't require resources for every branch to have a political class every week, or at the very least every 2 weeks. We need to come out with a plan. But there is no use in having political education if you are not involved in campaigning. You don't produce cadres only through theory. You produce cadres also through practice. If we are to build the SACP and to build seasoned cadres, we need to have campaigns all the time, on the ground. Some people say, when we say we are involved in campaigns, the SACP is a party of theory. It's not true. We've never just been a party of theory only. Yes, we're a party of theory, but we've also been a part of action. Since we were born 98 years ago, we built the trade union movement in this country. No other political party can claim to come anywhere near a South African Communist Party in building a progressive trade union movement. Over all these years, Oh, Dorata Mane, we honor their memory today because Dorata Mane was involved in the 40s in the building of cooperatives as well as organizing crashes for women who were working in the urban area so that their children could be looked after. When the movement decided to launch the armed struggle, we did not just participate, we were co-founders of Umkhonto weSizwe as the South African Communist Party. That's why its first two commanders was Comrade Nelson Mandela and Joe Slovo, because it was a joint project. And not just a party of theory only. In action, in the underground, in the 4 pillars of struggle, communists were there. In the mass struggle, in the underground, in the armed struggle, and in international isolation of the apartheid regime, which were our 4 pillars. We have always been there in action. In fact, you cannot theorize from the air. Your theory developed from being tested in practice. Now, there is another reality, though, that we must face, comrades. We have grown the SACP. We are now over 310,000 members. We are big as a communist party. We are very big. Why did we do that? We grew the SACP deliberately for a number of reasons. I want to mention just 2. The first reason we grew the party, we wanted to protect ourselves against our enemies, that if we are too small in numbers. By the way, since between 1921 and 1990, that's a long time, the party never had a membership of more than 3,000. 3,000. But after 1990, we said we want to grow the party to protect ourselves. There was even an offensive from inside our own movement, by the way, in the late 90s against our party, partly because of an unresolved problem. And we need to tell this history to our younger comrades, that when the SACP was unbanned in 1990 together with the ANC, the first central committee that sat was in Lusaka. There was a debate and big disagreements in that central committee. I wasn't there, but comrades who were there told us on whether there was a need for the Communist Party to continue to exist, or we should all be focusing now on the ANC and focusing on moving towards our democracy. Big debate. Other comrades said no. Precisely at this time we need the SACP. What happened? What happened? Those who had said the ANC, the SACP must die, they left the South African Communist Party after 1990. Abavalelisanga kokuvalelisa. I'm saying that not because I want to be nasty about the past. Some of them are the ones who today come and say, we are no longer genuine communists. But they left, they didn't say goodbye when they left. And why should we be a communist party that behaves as if this is 1980? They even tell us, if Comrade Chris was alive, Comrade Chris and system, they speak for umyeni wakho nje nomi kanjani, our leader. He would not have been doing this. How do you know? They say Comrade Chris would not have joined government. How do you know? Some of us wanted Comrade Chris not only to join government, we wanted him at some stage to lead this government. Kusabantu abahamba bengavalelisanga. We don't want to sound as if we are nasty. A communist party must be able, you know, Comrade Chris used to say this. At a communist party, what it must be able to do is that it must be agile, it must be flexible, it must be adaptable, and be able to deal with whatever conditions it is faced with. That was his motto all the time. We grew the party, comrades, also because we wanted to be everywhere. But growing the party also comes with a price. That if you grow the party without cadre development, and political education, you are creating a problem. And let's admit that we value every member of the SACP, but we do not have enough cadres. Let's accept that. And that's the challenge we have. We need to produce more cadres. One comrade was a Northwest, comrade Matot, one of your deputies, said something at the Augmented Central Committee and said, let's be honest, are we having a communist party here, or we are just having members of the ANC who are in the SACP? Not because the ANC, being a member of the ANC, is bad. Was just posing it not because he was saying the ANC is bad, but he was saying, are we really having members who are conscious about what it means to be in the Communist Party? We have grown faster than our capacity. We need to look into this. Being a vanguard, comrades, means you can't lament. You analyze, you don't lament. But also it means to be a vanguard, you don't have to be occupying a leadership position everywhere. To be a vanguard means you provide strategic and ideological direction even if we are not leading in front. Being a vanguard means you are able to provide leadership, strategic leadership, and ideological guidance, even if organizationally you are not leading that structure you are in. But in addition, also, it means you are the most disciplined and the most dedicated. That's what it means, being a vanguard party. Now, also being a vanguard party, comrades, means resources. Comrade Joyce is going to talk about that. I don't want to talk about resources here because our friends, which we need from the media, they must misinterpret me. And when we discuss our own financial matters, we will ask them to relieve us, because in Zulu, uma ichaga zixoxa ngento ngokuhlupheka kwaso, abakwamakhelwana asibafuni yinto yasekhaya. You know, if the poor are talking about how much they owe Mashonisa and so that, it's a family matter. It's not a matter for the neighbors. So that is why we will ask the media not to be with us. But you can't be a vanguard party if you don't have money. You can't be a vanguard party if you don't have resources. Very few comrades are raising resources here. And our enemies, by the way, they target that. They know you'll only kill the Communist Party by not allowing it to have money. The last and most important point the Central Committee has asked me to address is that you cannot be a vanguard party unless you are united. I think the message from the Cuban comrade yesterday was loud and clear. Now, what does unity mean in the party? Firstly, it means we respect the principle of democratic centralism. What does that mean? Because sometimes we take these things for granted. It means higher structures, before they take decisions, they listen and engage lower structures. But once a higher structure has taken a decision, that decision is binding on all lower structures. We can't take a decision as the Central Committee that this is not going to be an elective conference and a provincial structure goes out to the media to say this must be an elective conference. That's being undisciplined. Now, another thing comrades must know. You must know your scope at the level at which you operate. You can't have a district talking about matters that a provincial leadership is supposed to deal with. You can't have a province that pronounces itself as if it were a central committee. That's part of understanding who we are and why we operate. As the SACP, there are certain things we've done which are good. We have sought to unite the party. In fact, over the last 15 years, we are the most united structure in the alliance. Not that we are competing. And we are saying we must use that unity to contribute to the unity of the alliance and our allies as well. Why have we been like that? We have consciously sought to foster unity. In some provinces, we went and say, we know we are in different factions. You are in this faction, you are in that faction. We brought comrades together and say, from today onwards, stop that thing. We don't elect. The last 3 or 4 central committees, the congresses, we are not electing, we would agree. In many of our provincial congresses and district congresses, we agree beforehand and engage each other. But some comrades have got a habit of thinking that by the central committee acting that way, it's a sign of weakness. And therefore, it allows people to want to do as they wish. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of maturity. Communists must be mature at all times. Now, another thing that we've done to promote unity is to allow any member of the party, any structure of the party, to raise whatever it wants to raise in the SACP. And we must not prevent anyone to raise whatever. But that must be raised inside the structures. The moment you start raising an issue that you are unhappy about in the newspapers, then you must know we are on a slippery slope. You know, we sometimes talk about some of our allied formations that have got factions that carry out their issues through newspapers. It all starts there in a small way, and we watch it and we don't act on it. There's been lots of speculation as to why we are having this special National Congress. To know, Sizo decide ukuthi uNzimande must choose being in cabinet or being in the Central Committee. That does not require a special National Congress. If you are fed up, you think uNzimande is out of order, the officials or the Politburo can call uNzimande and say to uNzimande, thank you very much. And uNzimande, what will he do? Othatha ibhanchi lakhe abona indlela ebheke kuwa qhamuka kuyo kwaDambuza. He's not going to resist at all. That doesn't have to be a matter of a special National Congress. We don't do things that way in the SACP. Let's not introduce foreign. If you don't act in a manner that unites, we are not going to be capable to be a vanguard. That's why the message of the Central Committee as I sit down is simply saying, let's behave ourselves in this special Congress in a manner that unites the SACP. Because we must remember the SACP does not belong to us who are sitting here. It's an organ. It's the political organ of South Africa's working class. That's what the SACP is. So unity of the SACP is above all else. And none of you sitting there have an entitlement permanent to be delegates or to be in positions that we are in. You serve at the pleasure of the South African Communist Party, an organ of South Africa's working class whose main mission is the achievement of socialism in South Africa. Iparty yasetshenzilwa alala iparty yasetshenzilwa alala ayithengwa ngethenda hayi alala ayithengwa ngethenda alala yo ensi yasetshenzilwa alala yasetshenzilwa
ANC yasetyenzelwa halala yasetyenze hayengwa ngethenda halala iyoyo yasetyenze hayithengwa ngethenda halala iyoyo yepati yasetyenzelwa halala epati yasetyenzelwa halala yasetyenze halala amandla Viva the SACP, viva! Thank you, Nopal. Thank you, Nopala, for that revolutionary report. This was political education. This is part of the political education. When we receive these reports, they help us to go and read where we've been referred to. And I hope we're going to do that as comrades. But because comrades, like the chairperson said yesterday, when you behave, you must be rewarded. Now I'm going to reward you with a 15 minutes break. That's the reward. Let's adjourn for 15 minutes, it's a break, and then we come back, comrades. Thank you.
Ask them to get copies of the political report.
Comrades, the copies of the political report are available. They are being distributed at the moment.
After the session, lunchtime. Yeah, lunchtime.